Okay, let's unpack this.
Right.
Every day we're just immersed in this like flood of information, right? News, social media feeds.
Absolutely overwhelming sometimes.
Totally. But how much of it, truly resonates? How much actually sticks?
Good question. Does it spark an idea or really change how you see things? Often not.
Exactly. So today we're diving into a really intriguing new analysis. It's by Ivan Pozzoni from his 2024 work, Kolektivne NSEAE.
And the sources we're drawing on are quite varied. Some dense philosophical critiques, but also some really striking poetic reflections.
Yeah. And our mission for you, the listener, is to explore what Pozzoni calls a critical disease of the 21st century.
Sounds serious.
It does. He calls it a widespread disinterest in aesthetic experiences. So that's art, literature, culture generally.
Okay.
We'll trace its surprising historical and economic roots, and then we'll uncover a truly radical proposed therapy for its cure.
A therapy. Interesting.
Right. Yeah. Think of this as a shortcut to understanding a crucial debate about our culture, one that's often kind of hidden from public view. So let's start right there. This core problem Pozzoni identifies, he calls it a disease. What exactly does he mean by disinterest in art? Was it just like people aren't reading anymore or visiting galleries? Or is it something deeper?
It's definitely deeper. What's fascinating here is that Pozzoni argues this disinterest isn't just some fleeting trend.
Okay.
He sees it as a profound redefinition of how the public interacts with art. He actually thinks the phrase death of the public is a bit misleading.
Right. So it's not that the public is gone, but its relationship to art has fundamentally changed.
Exactly. It's become this deep, widespread apathy. And crucially, it's not confined to some, highbrow niche. It affects all forms of literature, poetry, novels, short stories. And he argues it's been clearly observable since at least, say, 2015.
Wow, that recent.
Well, becoming clearly observable then. The roots go back further, as we'll see. But yeah, the evidence is piling up now.
And this isn't just his opinion.
No. He stresses it's backed by concrete data. Things like ministerial reports, industry association data, even financial analyses of publishing houses.
Okay.
For instance, an expert named Bellardinelli noted in an interview specifically about Italian poetry, but it reflects a broader trend, that it's primarily read only by other poets or aspiring poets.
So like an echo chamber.
Precisely, a self-referential bubble. And Bellardinelli argues this leads to a decline in quality, which he calls an objective truth. And it really points to this fundamental shift, almost a detachment, in how we engage with culture. Lingua glossa even calls it a sociological, intellectual, and epistemological phenomenon. It's systemic.
That's a really powerful claim, that art is becoming so insular. Okay, so if that's the problem, what does Pozzoni pinpoint as a root cause? Where does this disinterest come from?
Right, this is where his historical analysis gets really interesting.
Yeah.
He traces the core historical cause, he calls it the anamnesis, like the patient's history, to the hypertrophy.
Hypertrophy, big word.
Yeah. It means excessive growth or development. The hypertrophy of what he terms the egopathic lyrical I of the author in every aesthetic experience.
The egopathic lyrical I. Okay, break that down. It sounds like too much ego.
Essentially, yes. Think of it as art becoming overwhelmingly apparently about the individual creator's perspective, their feelings, their I.
It's less about
the shared experience, the connection with the audience.
So it's almost like the artist became this solo performer. And the audience, who maybe once felt like active participants,
Right.
They got relegated to just sitting there silently.
Exactly. That dynamic completely shifted. And Pozzoni actually points fingers, interestingly, at what he calls unwitting culprits.
Unwitting. So they didn't mean to cause this.
Apparently not. Foundational figures like Dante in literature.
Dante, wow.
Yeah. And René Descartes in philosophy. He argues they inadvertently set the stage for this profound change.
Okay, how so? How did Dante and Descartes lead to less interest in art today?
Well, to really get it, Pozzoni says we need to contrast ancient and modern aesthetic ontology. Basically how art was understood and made in different times.
Okay. Ancient versus modern.
He draws on Bruno Gentili's work, Poesia e Pubblico nella Greece Antica. Gentili highlights how in ancient Greece there was this really dynamic relationship
Between
the artists' epidects, their performance, their showing off basically, and the public's thama.
Thoma?
Yeah, it's like the audience's wonder, their reaction, their spectacle. It was a kind of active counter-performance. The audience's live reaction was vital to the whole thing.
I see. So the audience wasn't passive at all.
Not at all. But in the modern era, Pozzoni argues the artist's that individual perspective has started to dominate. And this effectively silenced the public, leading to what he calls its privatization.
Privatization, meaning art became a private individual thing, like listening to music on headphones instead of a concert.
That's a good analogy, yeah. Less of a collective shared event, more of an internal solitary experience.
Oh, okay, so connecting this back. Dante and Descartes, they unintentionally kicked this off. But how did their influence snowball into this extreme focus on the individual artist?
Right. So while they maybe just opened the door, their influence, Pozzoni argues, tragically escalated.
Ow! Let's take Dante first.
Okay, with Dante, his pioneering focus on the individual's inner life, you see it in works like Vita Nova.
Right.
That inadvertently paved the way for what Pozzoni calls contemporary egolalia.
Egolalia, like talking to oneself.
Kind of, like artistic self-talk.
Yeah.
Where the art becomes so focused on the artist's inner world, it just struggles to speak to anyone outside that bubble.
And that breeds narcissism.
He argues it fostered aesthetic narcissism. Yeah. And it was amplified by later movements like Hermeticism, which emphasized hidden esoteric meanings.
Making art even harder to access for a general audience.
Exactly. Now, for Descartes, his philosophical egotism, I think, therefore I am.
Cogito ergo sum, famous line.
The very one. And his whole distinction between the res cogitans, the thinking mind, and res extensa, the physical world, that inadvertently laid the groundwork for what Pozzoni terms philosophical egopathy, a kind of unhealthy obsession with the individual I, which he sees echoed later in thinkers like Stirner and Nietzsche, these heretical Freudians who really champion the ego.
Interesting. Now, this focus on the I might make you think of, well, the Romantics, right? Aren't they usually associated with expressing the self?
That's the common perception, yeah. But Pozzoni actually challenges that directly. He calls that idea a totally erroneous vulgate, basically, a widespread but wrong belief.
So what was Romanticism about, according to this view?
He argues, drawing on Auerbach's mimesis, that Romanticism was actually more caught up in debates about mimesis, how art should imitate reality.
Not just about feelings and the self.
Not solely, no. He points out that someone like Manzoni, a key romantic figure, actually rejected the lyrical I in works like Inni Sacri.
Unlike Leopardi, maybe.
Exactly. Manzoni apparently advocated for a poetry of us, a more collective voice.
That's a fascinating distinction. It complicates the picture.
It really does. And even another romantic, Burchett, Pozzoni says, unintentionally hit on something important.
What was that?
Burchett had this clamorous intuition, as Pozzoni puts it, that for a poet to succeed, readers needed to have a passive poetic tendency.
Meaning the audience had to be kind of open to it, receptive.
Exactly. They needed a certain disposition. And this insight, combined with what Pozzoni vaguely calls questionable financial events and normative disciplines.
Like shady money stuff and weird rules in the art world.
Seems to be the gist, yeah.
Yeah.
He suggests these things also contributed to the privatization or deprivation of the modern public, pushing them further away from actively engaging with art.
Okay, so we've traced this disease of disinterest back through philosophy literature. We see how the I sort of took over. But it's not just this long historical arc. Pozzoni argues that much more recently, things have sped up. Modern economic and institutional factors have dramatically accelerated the problem, especially since, say, 2005 to 2015.
Yes, absolutely. The historical roots set the stage, but recent factors threw fuel on the fire.
What are some of those critical factors?
Well, he points to several things. One is market saturation, just a huge explosion of amateur works, and maybe publishers putting out stuff that, well, lacks significant value.
So it's harder for the good stuff to get noticed.
That seems to be the idea. Noise drowning out the signal. Then, surprisingly, he points to libraries.
Libraries, how are they part of the problem?
Apparently, due to specific Ministry of Education directives in some places, libraries have sometimes refused to acquire new poetry and novels.
Really? Limiting access even more.
Exactly. And then you've got smaller publishers who are just ceasing distribution altogether because costs are rising too much.
Wow, so the infrastructure is crumbling too.
It seems so. And maybe the most critical point he makes here is about academia.
What about it?
He argues that academia has largely refused to seriously engage with and analyze contemporary works.
So professors aren't studying or teaching recent art and literature.
Or not nearly enough.
Sure.
This creates what he calls a significant scollamento, a disconnect.
A gap between the ivory tower and what artists are actually doing now.
Precisely. which isolates contemporary art even further.
Okay, so faced with this diagnosis, this disease with deep roots and modern accelerants, Pozzoni proposes a therapy. You mentioned it was radical.
Oh, definitely radical. It comes from what he describes as an anarcho-individualist and hedonist perspective.
That's quite a label.
It is. And the therapy is essentially a complete paradigm shift, a total break from this modern, eye-centric way of thinking about art.
Okay, so what does this new paradigm look like?
Well, this new aesthetic is built on what he calls alternative lines, paths that consciously oppose that dominant trajectory set by Dante and Descartes.
Alternative lines, like a counter history?
Kind of. So on the philosophical side, instead of Descartes leading to ego obsession, this line runs from Spinoza through to analytic philosophy.
Figures like Locke, Hume, Peirce, Dewey.
Exactly. And the emphasis here is on assemblerism.
Assemblerism, like getting together.
Yeah, a collective approach to finding truth, supported by newer ways of knowing, like verificationism and falsificationism ideas have to be tested, proven, argued collectively.
Okay, so that's the philosophical counterline. What about literature?
The literary counterline runs from Petrarca up to the contemporary Italian writing collective Wu Ming.
Wu Ming, right. Known for their collective authorship.
Precisely. The goal here is to moderate that lyrical eye and instead exalt the collective anonymous. It's about drawing directly from that ancient idea of shared aesthetic experience we talked about.
Bringing the audience, the we, back into the picture.
Exactly.
And a crucial part of this whole therapy you mentioned is a strong call for academic support.
Yes, absolutely essential in his view. He believes this collaboration is vital to bridge that disconnect we discussed.
To heal the scolamento.
Right. To defeat the egopathic lyrical, as he puts it, and to actually implement this new aesthetic properly. Academia needs to get involved with contemporary art again.
So this raises the big question. How does this new aesthetic actually manifest? What does it look like, sound like, feel like?
Okay, so it's embodied in the movement Pozzoni founded, Kolektivne NSEAE.
The acronym, Nuova Socio-Ethno-Anthropological Aesthetica.
That's the one, a new socio-ethno-anthropological aesthetic. It's a movement with a deliberately non-ontological legacy.
Non-ontological, meaning it doesn't assume there's one single fixed way art is or should be experienced.
Precisely. It's fluid, adaptable. And its new poetry form, or aesthetic paradigm, is built on three core principles.
Okay, what are they?
First, experimental aesthetics. Think of art like a scientific experiment.
How so?
By integrating findings from contemporary neuroaesthetics, mirror neuron research, actually connecting art to brain imaging and empirical observation.
Wow, very scientific. What's second?
Second, participant observation. This is key. It redefines aesthetic experience, or what they sometimes call a riot-text, as mere social interaction.
Mere social interaction. So art is the interaction.
That's the idea, often using forms like anti-poetry that deliberately push against the traditional notion of the single genius creator I. It's about what happens between people.
Okay, experimental aesthetics, participant observation, and the third.
Third, clarity. A strong emphasis on rigorous, clear argumentation in and about art, avoiding ambiguous, overly rhetorical language.
Rhetoric talk.
Pretty much. And fostering what he calls network assemblies of researchers, groups, collaborating to seek truth, moving beyond fuzzy, outdated notions of community. Cooperation is key.
So these new art forms, riot texts, anti-dot poetry, they sound really different. What are their main tools or techniques?
Well, they're rooted in pragmatics, how language is actually used in context. Pozzoni argues traditional semantics, fixed meanings, are obsolete now. They use techniques like antiphrastic irony, saying the opposite of what you mean, but for sharp critique, and carnivalization.
Like Bakhtin's idea, turning hierarchies upside down.
Exactly that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Subverting norms through art. It's fundamentally a socio-ethno-anthropological approach, looking at society with what's vividly described as an anatomopathologist's observation.
Like a coroner examining a body. That's intense, clinical.
It is a detached, analytical gaze at societal problems.
And Pozzoni's own artistic journey reflects this shift.
Absolutely. He personally moved from writing more traditional metric fragments towards chorastic fragments.
Chorastic, like a chorus.
Yeah, influenced by sociologists like Zygmunt Bauman, ideas like liquid life, liminality, reflecting that instability, especially after the 2008 financial crisis. And ultimately, he fully embraced anti-dot poetry. His own work actively aims to oppose that self-absorbed aesthetic ontology of the 20th century. Irony and free verse are key tools for him.
Now, what's really striking, you mentioned earlier, is his personal commitment. He didn't just write about this stuff.
No, he lived it, in a way. After publishing an essay in 2018 arguing for the, quote, uselessness of modern writing in the Tardo Moderno, the late modern period,
Yeah.
he actually stopped writing art completely. Just quit.
Wow. What did he do?
He transitioned and became a successful legal consultant, apparently, in international commercial law. Completely different field.
That's a serious statement.
It is. But in 2024, he comes back to the art world, specifically to found Kolektivne NSEAE.
Suggesting the crisis he perceived was real and urgent enough to pull him back in.
That seems to be the implication. And critics have noticed this unique approach. Claudio Damiani described Pozzoni's observational style as almost like a narrator, natural, true, clear, like an anthropologist or sociologist studying in the world.
Okay, so to give listeners a real taste of this anti-dot poetry, let's look at some examples from the sources. We should keep in mind that directness, that socio-anthropological lens.
Right. Consider titles like Rogito ergo sum and Le Petit Ive.
Rogito ergo sum, playing on Descartes. I buy real estate, therefore I am.
Exactly. These poems offer a really vivid critique of modern financialization, the obsession with property, the crushing tax burden. Le Petit Ivia, puns on Ivia, the Italian VAT, and appetite, hepatitis.
So tying identity and existence to economic transactions and illness caused by the system.
Precisely, pointing to that societal malaise. Then there's Il Congo del Bandolero.
The bandit's tango.
Yeah. It's described as a sharp critique of generational irresponsibility.
How so?
Portraying how past political choices, the example given is voting for figures like Andreotti, Spadolini, Craxi in Italy, are seen as having led directly to current economic hardships, the Troika, leaving younger generations basically swimming in shit, to use the blunt language.
Wow, very direct. No punches pulled there. What about Siamo tigre di carta?
We are paper tigers. This one seems to reflect modern anxieties, consumer superficiality, the feeling of being powerful in words but maybe not in action.
Like all the no slogans. No TAV, no vax, no tax, no fly zone. Lots of protests, but maybe little real impact.
That's the kind of self-deception it seems to probe. The imagery of paper tigers is potent-looking, fierce, but ultimately fragile.
And it's not all just societal critiques. Some poems touch on more personal themes.
Yes, absolutely. Even within this anti-poetry framework. For example, Bronchot Pneumonia and Jenna went to Prague.
Okay.
These pieces apparently explore very personal themes: love, illness, the struggle with language barriers, existential loneliness. There's a line quoted, "Twin souls need nothing, they suffice themselves."
So even amidst the critique, there's space for that intimate human connection, or its absence.
It seems so. It shows the range isn't just sociological critique.
And finally, El Chihuahueño de Port Royal, the Chihuahua of Port Royal.
Ah, yeah. This one sounds playful but deep. It apparently uses the relationship of the dog to question consciousness, existence, and that whole Cartesian legacy again.
How does the dog fit in?
It critiques those who follow the logic of Port Royal thinkers associated with Descartes, seeing them as conquistadores cursari, pirate conquerors of logic, who reduce living beings, even pets, to mere inanimate objects, res extensa.
So using the dog to argue for the consciousness and value of non-human life against that detached, objectifying view.
Exactly. It's a fascinating blend of the personal, the philosophical, and the critique of that dominant I.
Okay, so we've taken quite a deep dive here into Pozzoni's compelling, if challenging, argument.
Definitely.
The idea that this widespread disinterest in art isn't just a passing trend, but a kind of cultural disease.
Rooted deep in history, in that hypertrophy of the singular I.
And then turbocharged by modern economic realities and institutional failures like academia's disconnect.
Right, it's a multi-layered diagnosis.
And the proposed therapy through Kolektivne NSEAE is genuinely radical, a call for a completely new way of thinking about and making art.
Yeah, this new non-ontological aesthetic, it's all about being collective, experimental, participatory, and above all, clear.
Moving away from ambiguity and lone genius.
Exactly. It's a profound shift from art centered on the singular I to one that embraces the we, seeing aesthetic experience as fundamentally a social interaction, something we do together.
So this deep dive really leaves us with a provocative thought, doesn't it? For you, the listener. If art really can be an aesthetic experiment based on participant observation, explained with maximum communicative clarity, how might you start to look for that?
Yeah, how would you engage with these newer forms of art if you encountered them?
And maybe even what kind of aesthetic experiments could you participate in your own life or community to help foster a more connected, vibrant cultural landscape?
Moving beyond that isolated I towards more of a collective we.
Exactly. Something to think about.